So this lender may not even know that correspondent banking. So let's just think about Bank A by itself. Assets and liabilities. And the first thing this bank can do, there's lots of people who have deposit accounts in Bank A. There's people who have deposit accounts in Bank B and Bank C and so forth. And they are transferring them to each other. They're making payments with checks. Okay? What is a check? A check is an order to pay. Okay? So the bank is receiving throughout the day various orders to pay. Okay? And it isn't paying any of them. It's just collecting them. Okay? It's stacking them up and keeping track of them. And then it sorts them by pay who. Not alpha, beta, gamma, lambda, but bank A, B, C, D. It just cares about the interbank. Once it gets to bank B, let them give it to lambda. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just paying. For me, this order to pay is an order to pay bank B. You notice on the bottom of your checks this little tracking number. That's what that's for. It's saying which bank are we supposed to send this to? And then there's an account number, and that's just the problem of your own bank. Okay, they don't care about that. So Bank A is collecting these, and it collects them all. I'll put a little summation sign. So due to customers of Bank A, that's its own bank, okay, and due from customers of Bank A. And so these are people in Bank A who are paying people in Bank B, Bank A. No problem. There's no need for reserve flows. Okay, so the net, which we'll put here as a memo item over here, is going to be 0. Okay, but I'm just putting that there to start getting the idea. Keep track of other checks due to Bank B. Okay, so there's somebody in A who's paid somebody with an account in Bank B, and that creates an obligation of Bank A to pay Bank B. Okay, so that you calculate all of these things, you add them all up, due to B, due from B, okay, due to C, due to D, due from C, due from D. Okay, and then at the end of the day, you have a net. Now, some of these nets may be positive, some of these nets may be negative. Okay, there may be more payments coming in on one side and more payments coming in on the other. Okay, the correspondent balance piece, we're gonna get to something about that positive negative thing later on with clearinghouses, but let's just do correspondent banking first. The point is, this is a payment system, and these banks are just used to paying each other. Okay, so Bank A and Bank B. Some days there's a net pay in one direction, some days there's a net pay in the other direction. There are payments going back and forth. They're used to each other. These banks are meeting at the end of the day and clearing accounts. Okay? They could clear in reserves, okay, as we saw. So they're doing some netting already, right? Just saying, what do I owe you on net? That's good. So we're not moving reserves back and forth across the street every day. That would be a pain. We're just maybe moving the net. But we can do better than that with correspondent balances. Okay? Think about Bank A and Bank B. If they do regular business with each other, they could just swap IOUs right now. Bank A could say, well, let me just put a deposit in B, in my own name, not some customer, banker's balances. Okay? And so that's a liability of Bank B. Deposit from A, to be clear what that is. And instead of making that deposit by transferring reserves, which would be one way, you just match it with a deposit going the other way. Okay, so here's a deposit. Okay, in A, and here is the deposit from B. Okay? This is a swap of IOUs. We're going to see a lot of this sort of thing in this course. This is a swap of IOUs. Bank A is saying, I owe you $1,000. Okay, Bank B is saying, no, I owe you $1,000. They both owe each other $1,000. So they've created these deposits from thin air. They're just a swap of IOUs. They've expanded their balance sheets, both of them. How can that possibly do anything? You know, there's no such thing as a free lunch. It seems like it couldn't possibly do anything, but it does. Okay, because that means that if A needs to pay B, okay, they can do it, okay, by just using their deposit in B, right? So one way to make a net payment here is just to draw this down, okay? And if we need to, you know, have, so here's the deposit of lambda, okay? So to transfer $10 from alpha to lambda, okay, it just involves crediting lambda's account here and debiting alpha's account here, okay? And you're debiting this one, okay? So you're debiting this account here, you're debiting this, so the Bank A's balance sheet shrinks in this model here, and Bank B's balance sheet stays the same, okay? Because it's just swapping an IOU from A for an IOU from lambda. So it's just moving between accounts. So one way to make, and no reserves need to travel. This is the point. No reserves need to travel. So if there's a balance that fluctuates from day to day, okay, you can just sort of keep track of it with these deposits here in this way. That's one way to make this happen. Okay, there's another way though. It's a swap of IOUs. Okay, there's another way. Okay. Again, we need to somehow move this, you know, this alpha's account is getting debited by 10, lambda's account is getting credited by 10. What other way could we do it? Another way is we could increase the deposits here, increase the liabilities of Bank A to B, okay? Increase the liabilities here, okay? In this case, this balance sheet, plus 10, minus 10 doesn't move. This balance sheet expands, right? So there's two different possibilities, two different ways alpha to pay beta, alpha to pay lambda, two different ways. One is by a shrinking of the balance sheet of the debtor bank. The other is by an expansion of the balance sheet of the creditor bank. Okay. Two different, these are just logical possibilities right now. Both of them are involving credit, okay? Which one gets picked? Okay. In the correspondent banking system, quite typically, there's a hierarchy of banks, okay? And the big, powerful city banks, you know, in the urban centers, say, you know what? I don't really have any reason to put deposits in you, little country bank. You put a deposit in me, okay? And you pay me in reserves, maybe up front, or I'll lend you the money or something and you pay me money for this. But we will use my deposits as clearing balances. Thank you very much, okay? And so there's a hierarchy there, okay, that it is going to be, and that's, you can see how that's a discipline thing. It's a discipline thing for the debtor bank, right? That the bank that's in the countryside basically has to have an account with an urban bank in order to join the payment system, okay? And it has to maintain deposits there, okay? If it runs out, there's no guarantee that Bank B is going to expand its balance sheet and help it out, okay? It might, but it might charge extra for this and so forth. This is the hierarchy of money showing up in the payment system. These balances here, these bank balances, are called correspondent balances. And they make the system work much more like the ideal one big bank operating on a credit system. The expansion or contraction, okay, depends on the arrangements between the banks. The retail customer has no idea about this. It's all behind the scenes. From the retail customer's point of view, it's all the same. Okay.